Hi, it's Joy, and today I'm going to be reviewing Superman and Lois, Season 1, Episode 13, Failsafe. Also, teeniest bit of reacting in it. I am losing the will to live today. I filmed this reaction, then found that my OBS had decided to change where it was getting the audio from, so it was no audio from me. I check everything 1,000 times when I react, and apparently today I didn't look to see if that was going because I just assumed it would be. So I then set around to do a review. Halfway through my review, my entire computer froze. So third time's the charm. So I'm really sorry this isn't a proper reaction, but I loved the episode. Luckily, it kind of felt like more of a sort of just everything slows down for a second, the characters breathe for a minute, we see where they're all at right now, and then at the end things ramp up ready for the last 2 episodes of the season. So thankfully it wasn't one of the like super action-packed episodes. Like had it been the previous episode I would have been devastated. So yes, I've made a little list, so if you see me looking down, I'm just double checking that I've like talking about everything I wanted to talk about. I'm sorry if I forget something. Like this is the third time I've reviewed this episode technically. So to begin with, I will start off with the fact that Jordan and Sarah are very sweet. They are very sweet teenage dreamways. I think they're very good for each other, and I'm glad they both have somebody. And right now, I think it's okay that he hasn't told her the truth about who he is and everything. If their relationship gets more serious, and if, you know, they both start getting older, or even if just they end up as friends and they stay very close, you will start running into the thing of he should tell her, but we're not there yet, and when that time comes with her or with anybody, Clark has been through it and we will get there. So then we have the town of Smallville itself, which is showing, in my opinion, all of the worst elements of small towns. You know, the idea of everyone knowing everyone and everyone knowing everyone else's business. The way they are treating the Cushings is disgusting. Yes, I can understand being concerned. Yes, I can understand maybe not being particularly happy with them and with Kyle, but talk to him about it. Ask him. Look him in the eye and say, why did you tell us we could trust Morgan Edge? Why were you so sure about it? Did you know? Did you benefit? Ask him. Like, yeah, it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation, but that's better than just, don't come into work, I'm going to treat you like shit. You know, if Smallville was truly the place it claims to be, where everyone knows everyone and cares about everyone and it's all a big community and you respect each other, if a member of your community makes a mistake, you immediately assume the worst of them. That really speaks a lot to who you are as a person. And I know it's because they're scared. I know it's because they don't want to blame themselves for being misled. So if they say, oh, it wasn't me, it was him and he made us do it. But I think the level of vitriol being held against this family, and it's even affecting the kids because kids are picking up on it, is disgusting, and I do not blame them for considering leaving. The mayor did not surprise me when he was just covering as himself, obviously, keeping everyone happy as much as he can. And I was particularly disappointed with the fellow firefighters because, you know, them trying to hold that one of them was injured because of Edge on Kyle, who was literally the guy that went in and risked his life to save his life. If Kyle had sat on the sidelines of that fire and been like, oh, it's a bit risky, can't do anything, then maybe. But all Kyle ever was doing was caring about Smallville. And so look into it, ask him upright, say, did you benefit? You know, I don't want to think this of you, but maybe I don't know you. Did you have some sort of dodgy side deal with Edge? And when he turns around and says, no, I just believed in him because I wanted what was best for this town, you have to have a choice about whether or not you believe him. So I did find that very disappointing. And I do hope that the article Chrissy writes is going to help set the record straight and maybe make people question how they've been treating this family and realize how hypocritical and just horrible that they have been to these people who also suffered a great deal because of Edge. Especially with Kyle having been one of the brainwashing victims. You know, if he hadn't been, if Lana had kept him out of the leadership program and the family had somehow managed to skate through without any consequences, maybe I could understand that a little bit more, but they were right in the center of it. So then also both families, the Cushings and the Kents, were obviously dealing with some kids acting out, sneaking out of school and everything, but I really enjoyed the way both families handled it. There was the appropriate amount of anger at the children while also understanding that things are hard right now and we're here for each other and, you know, you're grounded or like whatever, but, you know, we're gonna get through this. I really enjoy the way they portray families in this show. They're very believable and heartfelt. So moving on to 7734. Now, I do kind of agree with both sides of this argument. I know I kind of in this show I've been of the opinion of I understand why the military have this, but I also have never fully loved that it was in the hands of the military. Because right now General Lane is fairly understandable. General Lane understands, he's pro-Superman, he knows who Clark is, but if he retires one day, when he retires one day, if he gets replaced, if, you know, the people above him decide someone else should be in charge of the Superman team or whatever, that is immediately a risk now that these weapons exist. And kind of like Lois was saying, there is a danger of the wrong person getting their hands on them. I also don't think they need the level of weaponry they had, the amount of weaponry they had. I think potentially if it was a focus on non-lethal weapons, just weapons that would subdue him so you could capture him, would be the preferred way to do this, especially given everything Clark has done. But also I was on agreeing with Clark in this episode that I don't think getting rid of the entire program is right either, because not only because of Clark, because one day Clark might be misled on all the things he's worried about, but also because we've already had one random Kryptonian show up out of nowhere. Who's to say there isn't another one? Who's to say there isn't something else that's going to happen? You know, yes, if a Kryptonian comes just like this time, Clark is going to go and fight and try and stop them, but he is one man. So having a few weapons, ideally non-lethal, that we could use against these people, I don't think is a bad idea. So I was agreeing with both, and it made me really sad, but also really proud to see Clark owning up to the fact that part of why he was fighting so hard to keep these weapons was because he is scared that one day he might get tempted or misled or something. I mean, he is good, true and true, and we saw here that he was able to fight through, but I really respect him for admitting that there was a part of him that remembers the freedom of just using his powers and being fully out of control and just going for it. And there's a part of him that probably thinks, I'd love to know what that feels like, because every second of every day he doesn't feel that. But I also don't think he would ever act on it. But I think the compromise they came up with, I loved, because yes, if you'd have asked me like 10 episodes ago, we're going to give that man the only way to kill Superman, I think neutralize would be better than killed. And I would not have supported it. But I do think John Henry has learned a lot. I think maybe, if anything, his interactions with Lois and with her family have helped him rediscover a part of himself that he was losing sight of. That all of the trauma and pain he'd been through had made him bury deep within. And so now that heart that he has is back. And I do believe that should there be another situation in which we need this Superman killing weapon, he would consult with Lois. He would say, look, is there any other way? He would make sure it was a last case scenario and not a first case scenario like there was in the previous episode. So I actually really respected the compromise they came up with, because I think these weapons need to exist. I don't think they need to exist in the number they currently do, with constant, you know, development and research into getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But I do think we need some form of them. So I was glad that we kept them in some way or another. It's just stressful. And so then, kind of continuing on the John Henry side of things with Jonathan, I am worried about Jonathan. You know, it was kind of sad in this episode to see he got more attention from whether it was the boys or whether it was the girl he fancied, because of who his family is and because, you know, he's cool right now because, like, his granddad runs the DOD and he's, you know, she was trying to get him from information. And that was sad to see, because it's still yet another sign that Jonathan doesn't really have a place here yet. Like, he'll always have his brother and that is everything. But I think, I mean, I know that from working with small children who are twins, you have to like encourage them to get their own friends as well. It's great for twins to have a good bond, siblings have a good bond, but they also do need their own lives. And yes, Jonathan does have Sarah, and I did actually like when Jordan was telling Sarah of all the good people she had in her life, she included John, but she's also his brother's girlfriend, so she's more his brother's than his. She hangs out with them largely because his brother's around, and yes, they have now become friends, but that's not why they became friends in the first place. They probably wouldn't have done necessarily or as quickly if Jordan hadn't been around. So I do think Jonathan is trying to find his place, where he fits in and who he is. And, you know, I like the fact that John Henry said, well, you can be more than just an athlete, you don't have to be one thing. What I'm worried about is he's going to go down this kind of, I'm going to get weaponry and guns and violence, and that's how I'm going to be strong, and that's how I'm going to be good enough, when, like, you already are good enough, sweet boy. You are a darling little, like, I mean, okay, you wouldn't want me to call him a darling little child, but you are a sweet, kind boy. You're a talented athlete. You are so young. You have your entire life ahead of you to figure out where you're going to slot in and where you're going to fit in. And I think if with the fullness of time, with a few more years, if he were to choose to go into some kind of line of superheroing or vigilantism, even if that became something where he would need to acquire weaponry of some kind or another, I wouldn't be opposed to that. But I think right now he is so very, very young to be thinking about all of this. And I think he wouldn't be going into it for the right reasons. He would be going into it because he thinks that's what's going to make him strong, that's what's going to make him as good as his brother, that's what's going to make him able to protect his family and make him feel safe and strong and powerful, rather than doing it because he's really thought it through, if that makes sense. So I'm worried he's walking down a dark path. But I'm more like, if he does continue this kind of going and hanging out with John Henry, I'm less concerned about that than I was previously, because John Henry has, I think, proven himself a lot and has grown as a person himself. But I'm also still just concerned in general about the path Jonathan is going down. And, you know, I'm sure there are going to be times, and there have been times where I've been concerned about Jordan, but right now Jordan's kind of doing okay, so my focus is on Jonathan currently. Back to kind of Smallville people not acting. I mean, I understood where Chrissy was coming from with being upset with Lois, because yeah, the whole point of, like, you know, Lois talks about, you know, no secrets and being there for the people and all of this, and now she's keeping secrets. But I do feel like, again, no one in Smallville gives anybody else the benefit of the doubt ever. You know, consider, maybe there's a reason Lois isn't saying anything. Maybe it's to protect Superman's identity. Maybe it's to protect Smallville from a bigger, more dangerous secret, from people coming in from the outside and hurting people again. You know, maybe Lois could have said, I promise you there is a good reason that I'm not telling you this, rather than just like, no, I'm not lying to you. But I kind of felt a little frustrated that at no point did she consider maybe that there was a valid reason that Lois was making an exception to her rule here. But I also like the fact that Lois recognized she was too close to this particular story and gave it to Chrissy and got her dad to make some kind of a statement so that they could help Smallville heal, because I think she really saw what was happening to the Cushings, and she could see that this town needs something from someone official to help them rebuild. I did just feel like in Smallville, someone does something that you don't fully understand and you assume the worst of them and then you write them off, and it's not a town I would want to live in very much. And I do really hope the story she writes helps the Cushings. So then I've left Edge till last. The ending of the episode was the part where I feel like the things really began to kick off. Now, the whole episode, I was worrying, what's his plan? What's his failsafe? Obviously, the word failsafe in the title ended up being more about Clark wanting the 7734 stuff to exist. And I really enjoyed the twist that Edge actually had disobeyed his father, had got his own plan, and that his own plan was still not good, but his own plan was the thing that we've been watching happen all season. And the failsafe was the original plan. I really enjoyed that kind of dynamic, because I've been saying, why on earth would Edge do whatever his father says? And I like that he didn't. Obviously, he didn't break away from it enough, and I don't blame him in the sense that I feel sorry for who he once was, a scared kid sent to a hostile, sent to a random planet, met with hostility, chased through, hunted down, experimented on. He was never going to end up particularly stable. But if he had found the elves, you know, if that was his family, and if that had been Clark's life, and Clark had found his crystal and had gone to the place and, you know, knew what to do to make the Fortress of Solitude or whatever, I think Clark's dad would have helped him heal and helped him find his truth and stay true to himself and not just look for vengeance, whereas obviously Edge's father just tortured him until he was subservient. So in some ways it made me like Edge that tiny smidge, the fact that he actually did do something for himself and not for his father. And I can kind of understand why he was pushed to this idea of, like, I've got to save all these Kryptonian souls, but the Kryptonians don't deserve life at the expense of humans. In the same way that if Earth was the one destroyed and we ended up on Krypton, we wouldn't deserve life over Kryptonians. If he'd only used some of his access to Earth science and knowledge to try and find another way to save the Kryptonians, I don't know, maybe there's some way you could put them into recently deceased people from Smallville, or, you know, like, there could be some kind of way that it wouldn't be ideal. I think, like, in Ghost Whisperer and maybe something else, like, there was something where, like, oh, if the person's just died, you can, I know Supernatural did that as well, like, and you inhabit the body, then you're technically, the person's gone, they weren't using it. You know, I think there could have been some way where we could still help the Kryptonians without destroying Earth and making it subservient in the process. I definitely think you can see why Edge turned out the way he did, but there also was no saving him at this point, because if looking Clark, his brother, into the eyes and seeing his brother's belief in this planet didn't move him, what would? The only thing that maybe would have done would have been if he'd managed to talk to his own mother, like we saw him want to. Maybe if he had been able to ask for her opinion, get her to talk to him, to tell her side of the story, let her say, I didn't leave you, it wasn't you I was abandoning, it was, you know, I found love and I found something that was more important, and I realized, like, I stayed true to who I am, and she might have helped him find something else if he was able to speak to her and not his father. I think Edge's story would have been very, very different. But the point we were at, he's too far gone at this stage. And then obviously the whole him becoming the Eradicator is crazy, and I don't entirely know what that means. Is he going to spend the next episode just wandering around being like, you're a Kryptonian, you're a Kryptonian, you're a Kryptonian? Or has this, what happened, unleashed the souls and they're all just going to be flying to Earth to find someone? Obviously we'll find out, but and Edge is willing to die to see this dawn. And what kind of a parent? You're like, yeah, instead of being like, live and have a good life, my son, and let that be the legacy of Krypton. Instead, you're like, die so I can come back, bitch. Do not like his father, obviously. I may have made that clear. So I'm very concerned with where it's going to go next. I still think it's absolutely ludicrous that when Superman, a hero who has saved countless lives on Earth, is turned to the dark side, it is like, we have to kill him. I'm sorry, just gonna go shoot him with a missile. No other option. When Edge, another Kryptonian, is definitely evil and always has been and has been planning this world domination and is the one that turned Superman dark, it's like, oh, well, we're just gonna lock him up in a little cage. He's gonna be fine. Now, I don't approve of execution, so I'm glad they didn't kill him, but the double standard is still ridiculous. So again, I am so unbelievably sorry that this is a rambly review that should have been at the end of the reaction and not a reaction. I put in, I think, like I'm planning currently, I think, to edit in a little bit of my like shocked faces with Edge at the end, because that's kind of the bit that translates the most without the words I was saying. But more or less the points I've made in this review are the points that I made throughout the episode. Technology, it literally hates me. Thank you so much, Jarell, for sponsoring. I really am sorry that this is like this. This reaction will be the same on YouTube as on Patreon, but all of the other reactions to this show are up unedited on my Patreon in full. And thank you so much for watching.